Everyone has that person in their friend group who's just always there. Nobody really wants them to be there, and yet they always end up there somehow. You all still have a good time, but you can't help feeling like it could have been even better if you didn't have to deal with them. They always say something dumb that ruins the mood, and the only fun part of the night is when everyone just mocks the hell out of them. That feeling pretty much sums up the extended gameplay trailer we saw for Spider Man 2. The intro was fantastic. It established Kraven as an intimidating and badass villain. Then we get to see Spider Man put his new Venom suit's abilities to the test. Now, the suit itself is something I'll get into later because there were some, well, let's say interesting choices made. Now, it was all going great until that friend showed up, who in this case happens to be Miles Morales. Then what follows is an overpowered character slicing through enemies in a 5-minute interactive movie that takes time away from the main character. There's a lot to get into about the Spider Man 2 footage we saw, so let's just start with a short description. The trailer starts with a bit of misdirection. We see a tatted up Russian guy, and at first it seemed like that was Kraven. Turns out that was just Kraven's prey, who tells his victim he's been in his shadow for hours, just watching him fail. Kraven berates his henchmen, saying he wants a better challenge. That's when they show him New York as a potential hunting ground. They highlight all the villains and heroes as potential prey, and Kraven likes what he sees. Fast forward 6 months, and Kraven's henchmen are hunting the lizard, aka Kurt Connors. They think he's surrounded in a storm cellar, but instead a Venom-clad Spider-Man bursts out. We see some Venom suit gameplay as he takes down the henchmen in an attempt to protect Connors. After easily beating them, he overhears another team on the radio say they located Connors in another part of the city. Peter is apparently too far, so he calls his trusty sidekick Miles Morales. We switch over to Miles, who locates the team and takes them down with ease. Way too much ease for my taste, but we'll get into that later. Peter eventually catches up, and so does the lizard. They follow him outside, and more henchmen arrive. We get an extended interactive movie scene, and Peter is shown to be pretty aggressive throughout the whole thing. He rushes in guns blazing and gets blown away. Miles and Spider-Man end up in the river, and after escaping the lizard, they take down the henchman's helicopter. Miles tells Spider-Man they should go after the lizard, but Spider-Man says he'll do it himself and swings away. Starting from the top, our introduction to Kraven was pretty amazing. Really established his character as this badass hunter who's tired of punching below his weight class. He wants a real challenge, and New York offers that to him in spades. We didn't really see any gameplay involving him, so for now, all we have is the CGI trailer, which is potentially just a cutscene from the game. Odd decision to have him hunt everyone instead of just Spider-Man, but that's a pretty small nitpick in an otherwise great scene. Switching over to Spider-Man, they make it very clear from the moment his black suit pops out of the cellar that the symbiote is already messing with his head. He's really pissed off about Kraven trying to hunt the lizard, and his anger reaches levels that make it seem like he'll get pretty close to killing in this game. Now, the suit itself was a very odd choice aesthetically, and it reminds me of Captain America's suit in the Avengers game. It almost looks like body armor when it should just have a smooth, almost liquid metallic look instead. It's a really strange change, especially considering how simplistic the original suit is. They basically put way more time and work into designing a different, bad looking suit when they could have just made it easier and better. Can't say I'm too surprised considering the redesign of the original Spider-Man suit, but frankly speaking, that worked. This doesn't. The gameplay we saw looks extremely rough. They clearly wanted to convey rage with the way that Venom Spider-Man fights. He used the symbiote in a similar way that the Venom movie did, shooting out tentacles to crash into enemies. We saw an aerial attack where the symbiote expanded around Spider-Man like a liquid metallic ball of spikes until he crashed down into his enemies. The big finale saw him grab 4 separate henchmen with his tentacles and smash them into the ground. Hard to judge the gameplay based on such a small interaction. Who knows how many other abilities there are with the Venom suit. If those are all the abilities, then it is a bit disappointing, but limited as it was, it did a great job of hammering home the idea that this is a Spider-Man who's given in fully to the symbiote and his own anger. From what we've seen, I'm excited about the Venom gameplay possibilities in this game. Unfortunately, the fun stops there because then came the part that I knew was coming but still hated to see. They forced the player to switch over to Miles Morales. Let's just put it this way. There's a reason they force you to switch instead of making it optional. Why in the hell would anyone want to play as Miles during the Venom Spider-Man arc? It makes absolutely no sense, and frankly, it's just silly. Bad enough his game didn't sell well, even when they forced you to buy it if you wanted the remastered Spider-Man game. Now they just shove him in Spider-Man's game to take away time from the main character. With him comes his cheesy, cringe-filled friend Genki, and Miles' insanely overpowered abilities. Venom Spider-Man gets to be overpowered because it's a temporary state that comes with a lot of consequences for Peter's life. Miles just has these abilities at all times with no disadvantages. Seeing Miles take out 5 enemies simultaneously with his static shock ripoff powers was sad to see in a Spider-Man game. Genuinely don't understand the appeal of this character. If you like him, that's fine, but this game should focus on Peter and the impact Venom has on his life. Miles' abilities remind me of when a kid comes up with a superhero and just combines all their favorites. Yeah, he's Spider-Man, but he's also Static Shock and he can teleport too.
That is one big pile of shit.
It just makes a mockery of the game and takes away time from Spider-Man. The worst part about Miles being in this game, though, is you can somewhat predict how he's going to fit in the story. Now, I could be wrong here, and God, I really hope I am, but it seems pretty likely one of the final battles will have the player controlling Miles and fighting Venom Spider-Man. The best part of the Venom storyline to me is always the part where Peter realizes what's happening to him and he has to overcome it himself. It's great character development because he always realizes how it's negatively affected him and his personality, sometimes driving him to the brink of murder, and he has to fight it off himself even though he knows the benefits it provides as Spider-Man. Having Miles just beat the Venom off him ruins all that, but of course, Miles has to be the hero who saves the day. Having him in this story just makes no sense no matter how you look at it. It takes time away from playing as Spider-Man and his Venom suit, not to mention the fact that his character is going to take away time from other characters being developed who matter more to Peter Parker's story. The game only has so much time to tell a story, and it feels like this might focus on the effect Venom has on Spider-Man's relationship with Miles as opposed to characters like Mary Jane Watson. During conversations in the game, other villains are hinted at. Peter mentions needing Connors to save Harry Osborn, which is why they're protecting Lizard from Kraven. We don't get much of a look at Lizard other than a few quick shots, but he definitely looks intimidating and pretty huge. It'll be interesting to see Lizard in this game considering in other media like animation, he's seen as a sympathetic villain that Peter actually wants to help and who does actually help Peter on occasion. The Osborns seem like a threat being set up for the third game, otherwise this game would be a bit overstuffed with content. They seem to be more important than they were in the last game, given that Peter probably gets infected with the Venom symbiote from Harry's stasis tank shown at the end of the last game. I really enjoyed the first Spider-Man game, and like I said, there's a lot that looks fantastic in this new one. There's also some things that weren't in the last game that somehow made their way into this one, which just can't be ignored. The villains look great, and considering how good the last game's villains were, it would be pretty impressive if they managed to top them. Gameplay was obviously limited, but the Venom scenes had me optimistic about what the full game could have in store. Obviously, one of the issues I had with what we saw was how big of a character Miles is now. If you like his character, great, but he has no place in a story that should center around the effect Venom has on both Spider-Man and Peter Parker's lives. The more time Miles gets, the less time Peter gets, and frankly that's a bad sign when it comes to adapting one of Spider-Man's most iconic arcs. There's a reason the animated adaptations took some liberties, but ultimately they retained the core of the story that focused on Spider-Man. Now look, does all that mean that I'm skipping this game? No, and the reason is that the Spider-Man gameplay is good enough to make up for the other nonsense. That being said, I'm definitely not excited for what seems like a watered down version of the first game, but at a time where good superhero content is scarce, if you want to enjoy anything, you have to be willing to deal with some bullshit along the way.